Before we start with this newest episode of Crown of Blood, I would just like to remind people that we do have a crowdfund going on right now, Akumana Learn, and it would be very much appreciated if you could donate even just $15, as this would help with the publishing and editing of this book. The rewards can be found on the link down below in the comment section.
Death in hallowed halls. My lord, wise men ne'er sit and wail their woes, but presently prevent the ways to wail. To fear the foe, since fear oppress strength, gives in your weakness strength unto your foe. And so, your follies fight against yourself. Fear and be slain. No worse can come to fight. Act 2, Scene 3, Richard II. 6:31 A.S. Boadicea huffed impatiently. She never did much like traveling for weeks without end. It meant being away from her children, never something she much cared for. She also had the sense, she often claimed, that there were schemes being hatched, armies potentially on the warpath every second they were away from Sigane. In particular, the newly crowned queen worried about the ever-present threat, symbolized by Ketil. Aware of this, Domhnall could not tolerate being separated from her. Certainly in recent years, he had come to regret his early infidelities, and had grown to adore his wife. But it was more than that. He was well aware few took him seriously, and that there were few he could trust, especially after what had happened with Duib's betrayal of him. This meant he needed to be careful who he trusted, with Boadicea the only one he felt certain he could trust.
Thank you for coming all this way, sire.
Abbot Tom greeted them, just outside the Abbey of Banrisreep.
But of course, Tom, I have been looking forward to this for months.
Domhnall replied enthusiastically, hopping off his horse only to aid Boadicea down from the back of it. His escort of 40 guards did the same, with only 5 of them remaining on horseback. Those 5 were the newest to his personal guard, the 5 being new to Caledonia, having arrived from Narencier. Since their arrival, they had never left the side of their newfound liege laird for a single moment, save for when he went to bed, left to toilet, or for him to confess his sins. Led by Sir Louis de Montvarrac, a formidable man of some 32 years, his appearance was in the view of Domhnall more than enough to frighten away most. His face was a fierce one, with a scar running next to his left eye, muscular, blonde-haired and bright-eyed. He and his men were more than enough to deter even most sellswords and Nordic warriors, and Khalids who meant harm to Domhnall. Louis observed the abbot with the warmth and appreciation of a man who loved his faith. With the other 4, Hugh, Baudouin, Yves, and Robert, no less impressed by the abbey.
Who are they, my laird? They were not with you the last time you visited.
Tom asked of the newly crowned monarch.
They are my new guard, or part of it. Boadicea hopes to recruit more.
Domhnall explained eagerly, if a little sheepishly.
It is her hope to entrust my safety to Arns and Narencians.
Who are they, my laird? They were not with you the last time you visited.
Oh, that happened when I was imprisoned. Killian brought me continuous news and allowed me messages from my dearest Boadicea.
Domhnall explained as he threw himself into the tale of how he came to have them with him. From there, he was asked about his coronation and threw himself into that tale also, with the assistance of his queen, of course. News of them had arrived in Caledonia shortly before the departure to confront Ketil on the part of Duib, with the 5 invited hither by Domhnall. Though he was supposed to filter his letters and messages, Culian, Mormaer of Athfatla, had refused and had instead passed them all along. It was he who had set the prince free and had it proclaimed throughout the kingdom ere the passing of Duib that Domhnall was High King.
No brother may succeed to the position of Laird or Mormaer before his brother, and so it is for the title of High King.
The old man had said to all in Sigane, and had it spread throughout the kingdom, so that within a month, all knew of his intention to rebel against Duib. Domhnall was not immediately elevated to the kingship, for it was not just Culian who wished to take advantage of the situation. Some were keen to weigh in, such as the Mormaer of Strathern, who insisted upon his own place at court as Domhnall's good cousin by virtue of marriage to Isla. Then there was the Mormaer of Bouvrain, along with his cousin, the Mormaer of Lilaume, both of them ruthless warlords who advanced with a combined company of 500 men. Neither man had welcomed Duib's usurpation, nor was either of them willing to let Athfatla take up the position of kingmaker without making it known they wished to have a say in who ought to be ruler. This, along with those clergymen who had rushed to the ancestral capital, had seen much politicking and a greater public show of support for a ruler than had been felt in years. Not since the coronation of Mile Martin, had so many nobles and clerics been seen there. Some had welcomed the show of unity, with some peasants dancing in the streets and singing as they proclaimed a new era of peace upon them.
And it's time for a Patreon shout out, as yes, we now have a Patreon patron. So shout out goes to David Perlmutter, the first of our Squire patrons.
See how they welcome the possibility of your rule.
Kirok, the Tigran Duvain of Tivum, said to Dumnal, managing to draw the pious royal into a confession, only to utilize the opportunity to discuss politics with him.
They welcome me only out of hatred for my brother.
Dumnal muttered discontentedly.
They would like the rule of my cousin Kettle far better.
Far better.
How can you say such a thing?
Kirok challenged with false mournfulness, of a similar mind, yet assigning himself the task of convincing Dumnal otherwise.
Certainly he is popular amongst some, but not all. Kettle is a warrior, a man who has lived by the sword, and is likely to die by it. What say you to this?
That this is the nature of those who lead nations, is it not?
Dumnal said morosely.
A nation requires a man prepared to wield the blade in defense of its honor and liberty, does it not?
Aye, certainly one could make that argument.
Kirok agreed a little too swiftly.
Aye, certainly one could make that argument. But what if that man's solution to all problems is the sword? What if he does not respect the faith enough? Or the people? What say you to that?
Dumnal was visibly troubled. He was uncertain of how best to answer him, so he preferred to ponder the situation. Under other circumstances, he might have consulted with the likes of his wife. But, as she was not present, he had none to fall back to. At this time, Kirok resorted to a new stratagem, tempting the monarch in another way.
What of Banrithri? You love that shrine, do you not?
Aye, of course.
How have the construction been coming along as of late?
Not very well. They are continuously slowed by the civil war.
Well, there is a simple solution to that.
Kirok informed him, and when prompted, he leaned closer to his host.
As monarch, you would have access to the royal treasury, would you not? You could make tax exemptions, give them access to better quarries, and also pay for its construction.
I suppose so.
Dumnal said with sincere thought, having never looked at the situation from such a perspective.
But I would need support from the clergy and nobility, and they would never agree to a thunderhead such as myself on the throne.
They might. I cannot speak for the nobility, though mayhaps you could make a friend of Asflotla and others that they might not harm you.
Kirok told him, hurrying to add,
But those you really need the support of are those of the clergy.
But they have always supported Kettle.
Dumnal complained, well aware of the troubles that his father, uncle, and brother had all shared where the clergy were concerned.
Nonsense! Kettle has never made the sort of contributions to a cathedral or a temple that you have. For example, Banrithri Abbey. When their temple burnt down, who was it who gave them the means to build a new cathedral? And what of the war monks of Zirkwall over in Bardrak? Or the nuns of that convent your wife adores so much in Mildrum?
Kirok exclaimed with false fervor.
Since he was cast down from his position of Tanist by my uncle, he's not had any means for aught else than war to support himself, never mind any temple.
Dumnal muttered, confused by the words of his new absolver. Kirok, seeing the futility of this argument, decided upon a new tactic.
Speaking of Kettle, it just occurred to me, Your Grace, given the number of nobles who have come to do you obeisance, how might he react, I wonder?
Who might react?
Through clenched teeth, as he began to lose patience with the other man, Karak replied,
Kettle, he has never been a very temperate man. Why, I imagine he might very well have your beloved queen ill-used before he has her slain. I would shudder to think what he might do to thy children.
But we are kin.
Such things mean very little to men of war, I'm afraid. This is why, sire, by this time, it might be too late for you. You need friends. You must buttress yourself with the protection and support of men such as Athla.
Father never liked Athwotla, though he has been very kind to me these past months. However, Father always warned me men such as he could move from kindness to savagery, one heartbeat to the next.
Dumno commented, rubbing at his temple as a headache began to build.
That is why, sire, you must protect yourself with the support of the clergy.
Karak said very slowly to him, slowly warming up to his topic as he spoke.
Men of war fear nothing more so than the divine, which is why, sire, you must put on a show of divinity.
But I am only mortal, and religion is not some piece of theatre. It is sacred.
But of course it is. None think so more than myself. It relieves me to hear you say so, sire.
Karak assured him, resisting the urge to maul this royal.
It is why you must cloak yourself in the majesty of the ceremonial. You must see to enhancing your aura of kingliness in such a way that to harm you would be to commit a mortal sin.
How am I to do that?
Oh, just leave that to me, sire. We need only have you crowned, but perhaps one other than the Mormera fort for you, and for another to carry the crown for the ceremony. It must also be so for you to perhaps also, in the style of the kings on the continent, give over the royal standard to a shrine of your choosing. It cannot be the monks of Skane. They guard the stone of destiny already, nor can it be Rona, for the archbishop there has the safekeeping of the royal necropolis. Therefore, choose wisely, sire, and do be sure to choose someone you can trust.
I should consort with Buchtig.
The queen has been entrusted with too many matters. This might overtax her delicate feminine will. Simply leave the matter of finding this trustworthy counselor to me.
And it's time for a Patreon shout out, as yes, we now have a Patreon patron. So shout out goes to David Perlmutter, the first of our Squire patrons.
In the days that followed, Dumnall was troubled over this matter, thinking he did need the support of the clergy. Being worried he may have put too much of a burden on his wife, he fretted about who to turn to now. It happened that during that time, he observed those such as Cullen more closely. In this way, he began to notice just how haughty those around him took to arguing over the coronation and seating arrangements. Disliked and scorned by his brothers and father for his slow wits, Dumnall had never lacked for his ability to discern hostility in others. It also occurred to him just how many of them had brought their own guards to the king's city. Fretful that he may have brought naught but suffering and sorrow to his wife and children, Dumnall began to eat less and less. He was also to take his meals with the members of the local clergy, rather than with the raucous feudal barons of Caledonia. If any noticed his disquiet, they did not make reference to it, nor did they make an attempt to comfort him or his ashen wife. That is, until Andrew of Kilrimmen called upon him late one night in his royal royal bedchambers. Sending Buadich away that she might fetch the abbot, pastries, and some wine from the kitchens, he turned wearily to the old faun. Bald and grey-bearded, the monk's dark, kindly eyes stared at him with visible worry as his horned, goat-like head bowed respectfully.
What is the matter, sire? I have noticed you have not been eating. You must preserve thy strength.
What difference does it make? If Kettle or any of the more mares hew me down,
Dumnall moaned, full of self-pity.
only my wife and Kerok care about me.
I cared about you and Kera.
Andrew exclaimed in bewilderment.
Why, I thought they lent him to me to be my absolver, but he has since offered me counsel also.
Andrew studied the son of Ringan closely, glad that he had come to visit the middle-aged man. Guilty of having dwelt within the clergy since he was born, he had served as abbot of Kilrimmen since the passing of Cosantine. Andrew had come to know all the princes of the clergy. To his mind, of all those who plagued Holy Father Temple, none were to be more disdained than Kerok. Andrew listened at first with a great deal of incredulousness as the guileless Domhnall recounted to him all that Kerok had said. His incredulity soon metamorphosed into a kind of cold anger.
You know, Domhnall, he is right. The coronation is a little lacking in augustness and majesty, though I would not remove from the honors of Ortriu. None would recognize any man who did so as High King. Everyone is well aware they are descended from Babonda, cousin of Korpak the hero, and this is why they crown the High King. Although it does not mean they shan't share the honor with others, nor does it mean that they must crown the queens of the Khalads.
Andrew remarked to him, keeping his tone light and thoughtful as he spoke.
Oh, really? Who should I honour with the carrying and safeguarding of the crowns? Who should crown the queen? The Archdruid of Rona? The Abbot of Athfotla?
They are certainly princes of Holy Father Temple, though I think they have honor enough.
Andrew replied, firmly deciding at once to have this honor for his own shrine.
What other temple has royal accolations?
Domhnall thought long and hard on the question, and where Kerok or Buadich would have lost patience by the time he answered, Andrew remained patient. He was well familiar with the man and was resolved not to speak angrily with him, as he rather liked him.
There is Killian.
Aye, there is.
Andrew agreed gently, almost passively before pouncing on other honors.
And there are other honors and dignities that could be doled out to other clergymen and vassals. If I may, the convent of Meldane showed great loyalty when they took in your wife. I dare say you ought to reward their abbess.
I should make her responsible for the crowning of Bochti. Both of them would very much like that.
Indeed. Now, what of the royal scepter and sword?
And so it went, as Domhnall was poked and prodded into deciding upon this honor or that one, upon this detail or that, for the royal coronation. By the time Buadich had returned from the kitchens, the two men had determined nigh on all aspects of the whole affair. Impressed by how far they had come along, and how well Andrew had managed her husband, Buadich was to thank him when the time came for him to leave for the monastery where he was staying. It was as he went to leave that Domhnall burst out with one last worry.
But none of this will matter if Kettle shows up and puts my head on a pike.
I would not worry about him at present, Domhnall.
Andrew warned quietly.
Why is that?
Because there are others more dangerous than he who are resolved to have you crowned High King.
Do I really have no other choice but to go along with this farce?
I am afraid so, Your Grace.
Andrew affirmed sadly, pitying the man before him, who once again turned ashen. Seeking to reassure him, he whispered,
I have known Kettle since he was a youth, though he is not intemperate. I am certain he will show mercy, even should he march on Sgain.
And it's time for a Patreon shout out, as yes, we now have a Patreon patron. So shout out goes to David Perlmutter, the first of our Squire patrons.
This was how it came to be that Domhnall was crowned High King in what was the grandest ceremony of coronation ever seen in the history of Caledonia. Led up the hill early in the morn alongside his wife and made to sit upon the Stone of Destiny by the abbot of the local monastery, he walked behind King Thorvin of the Dwarves and Mormaer Culian. Each of them carried in both their hands the royal sword and scepter, respectively. The two of them preceded Andrew, who had taken up the task of carrying the crown of Archaeus. After him came the two feudal barons and the royal couple, and then there came the representative of Fortriu, in this case, Giric MacDuib, as Duib was still alive at the time and unlikely to approve of the coronation of his brother. The lad had been brought north by the Lady Sorsha, who had forsworn her husband and lent her support in his usurpation. Not very fond of the 8-year-old, Domhnall had tried to befriend the child, only to his dismay to discover in him a rather spiteful, mean-spirited child. Though the child did not wholly understand what was happening, he carried himself at the front of the noble party with a great deal of pompousness. After the lad and his mother came two more Mormaers, both of whom blasted a great war horn. One was the Mormaer of Kull, the greatest baron of the Western Isles. The Mormaer was a thick-bearded man, 6 feet 4 inches tall, with thick muscles and an air of a tiger about him. His livery and coronet were decorated with that same animal, which was sacred to the line of Kull. Beside him advanced the Mormaer of Norroak, newly reconciled with Domhnall. With unicorns on his livery, hauberk, and coronet, Rory was a few inches shorter and proud of his place in the royal procession. Promised a cessation to the raids from the lairds of Balkend, who lived to the east of his own lands, and the hand of one of Domhnall's daughters to his son, he had joined the McRingian faction quite eagerly. The next in the procession was the rest of the nobility, with a great many of them noting the empty place in the procession after the royal couple, where the Tennist and the Tennist's bride were meant to be. All supposed and murmured later at the feast about this particular slot in the ceremony. Once at the summit of the hill, though, with garlands and flowers tossed before the procession by peasants and nuns, the High King was made to sit upon the stone. After this, he was to listen to a lengthy sermon where all his ancestors were recited to him. Afterwards, Thorvin was to place into his left hand the sword of the High Kings, while Culian put the royal scepter into his right hand. This was not the end of the ceremony, as the abbot of Sigane pulled out a stopper full of holy oil and poured it upon the head of Domhnall, anointing him. Then he did the same for Buidich, as she was made to kneel before him and her husband. The oil was said to have been given over to the royal family in the reign of Cosentin II by the paragon Wulfwin. This done, and with all of the nobility and clergy bending the knee, Giric MacDuib was given the crown by Andrew and made to place the crown on his head with the aid of the Lady Sorsha. The abbess Riona, an elderly woman of 76, hurried forward to place the smaller crown of the Queens of the Khalids, forged recently during the reign of Ringan for Queen Aina, on Buidich's head. Hail the High King! Long live the High King! Long live Domhnall IV! The first to carry up the cry was the Mormaer of Kull.
Long live Queen Buidich!
The Lady Sorsha added, not wishing to be outdone by the loudmouthed Mormaer. As the crown was deposited upon his head, Domhnall felt a chill go up his spine. It felt as though he had been given the kiss of death rather than a great gift, as Carrock had insisted he had been given. This was sure to be the death of him, he thought, brooding over his lot in life, one that had never been lonelier than at that moment. When he had first arrived in the south near Rothian, it had happened that Ketil was utterly confident that the crown was ripe for the plucking, so to speak. He had been well received, better than he had expected. He was able to survive off the land. He had the support of the local Mormaer and of some of the lairds of the region and of Fortriu, and had advanced northwest. Within a fortnight, he was near the Forest of the Longwoods and was prepared to journey around it to claim the local castles, and from there, Castle Fittich itself. This, combined with a delegation assuring him that Idis had begun her own journey through Bardrock with his son Archaeus, who had been recognized as Mormaer, had made things feel akin to a fait accompli. Then, the news that shook Ketil to his very core arrived. At first, he refused to believe them, thinking it some farce that some ignorant plebs had dreamt up in mockery of the crown. Amused, he had laughed along with some of his men. Days later, the truth arrived in his tent. Panting after a long ride from from the Abbey of Lardroth and seeking to play at friendship.
What?
Ketil gasped, staring at the monk standing before him.
Everyone has declared for him, from Strothern to the south, to Nurak, to the north, to Belkend in the east, to the Western Isles in the west.
Andrew informed him, a hint of regret in his voice.
See reason, Ketil. Domnal is kicked now.
Likely, Andrew might have said more were it not for the blow that was delivered to him by the enraged prince, who glared down at him, barely able to contain his wrath.
You would have me kneel before that imbecile?
Rubbing at his bruised, aching jaw, the fawn tested his jaw several times before replying.
His terms are not unreasonable. Once you listen to them, you may find yourself rather more amenable to him.
Terms from that one? Faith, I would rather eat horse dung than that.
Ketil roared, shaking with unconcealed rage.
The lairds of Luthien, the West, and even Strothern I might have expected. But for you to turn traitor against me after all that my father did for you, you little ingrate, choose your next words as though they were your last, for they might well be.
Andrew started several times, stopped several times, uttered a prayer, and spoke reluctantly.
You have no support, Kitty. All have turned against you.
And it's time for a Patreon shout out, as yes, we now have a Patreon patron. So shout out goes to David Perlmutter, the first of our Squire patrons.
All say the lairds of Bardrak and my old friends, King Thorvin and Rudri Norak.
Ketil said it once, only to stare and blink as Andrew avoided his gaze.
I rode ahead of Thorfinn and his army. He is coming under the guise of a peace in order to secure Domnall's throne.
The abbot told him softly.
Impossible. They would have no other allies were they to renounce me, and Domnall has no claim.
It is the Morpairs, Ketil. They seek to gain more power over the crown, the clergy, and the people of Caledonia.
Quoth Andrew gravely.
The terms I was set to give you are these. You are to be made a Morpair of Bartok with command of Balkend and of the South Marches. You are also to be made Tanist.
I am not Tanist. I am rightful High King of the Kelids. My father and Miel Martin recognized me as such by royal decree and royal charter.
Ketil snapped at him.
And so you shall be in 2 years' time.
What?
2 years, Ketil. 2 years, and Domnall will abdicate to retire to the Abbey of Barnisrip.
Lies. Why wait 2 years? Why not abdicate now?
The Morpairs, Ketil, they have already declared for Domnall. If he were to abdicate now, they would claim you pressured him off the throne. He is also popular. The people.
Another tense silence followed. Andrew waited anxiously, hopeful that the prince would make the correct decision. In the end, though, his hopes were dashed.
Why must I be the one to forfeit and surrender? Why must my claim always be rejected? I, who have in my veins the blood of Achaeus, half-elven and Cosentine, the Great. Must I always be denied everything?
Ketil cried out bitterly as a lifetime of sorrow burst out from deep within his soul.
Domhnall, Ringin, Archias, Duab, and now another Domhnall. How many more shall the gods and men place before me in all things?
Andrew opened and closed his mouth, whereupon he heaved a great sigh and tried to speak out to the lad he once tutored when they lived together in the Abbey of Kilrimmen.
Get out, and tell thy master to prepare himself for war. I will see him on the battlefield, and I will reduce all he loves to ruin, and I will do so with the aid of my friends, Norak and Thorvin.
Andrew, hurt and dejected, did as he was commanded. Yet he would not leave the vicinity of the encampment. He was later to be found praying with some of the men a short distance to the west of the encampment. He was left alone, so that when he returned the next day, he was resolved to reason once more with Ketil. Threatened and accused of every falsehood and crime imaginable, Andrew would not budge. It would only be on the 4th day of his arrival that the scouts would report that the banners of the dwarves, led by Thorvin, had been sighted. Andrew, who had been in the middle of reading a passage from the Canticle, namely the Book of Tempestus, the goddess of the storm, to a number of the men, leaped 50 meters in the air. Such was the fury that boomed out from the monarch's tent as Ketil threw himself out from within it. Newly returned from a visit to the village within the forest, to the dismay of Andrew, to consult with the heathen matriarch of the Wilder Elves.
Gwydion Sigmundarson, Andrew, follow!
Ketil commanded curtly. Gideon was a blonde-haired and bearded half-Arn, half-Erging man of almost 6 feet tall, muscular with a hauberk emblazoned with a green dragon at its center. His ordinarily mirthful blue eyes grew serious when he heard his liege's harsh tone. Swallowing a mouthful of boar meat he had hunted, with permission of course of the elves, as he had been the only guard Ketil had taken with him, he leaped onto his black stallion.
Coming, sire.
Me?
You!
Not needing to be told once more, Andrew hurried thither to one of the proffered horses, which he was aided onto, and soon found himself riding out to greet Thorvin. Staying near the encampment, which began to break up, in favor of a shield wall formation, it was evident that Ketil did not trust Thorvin. Andrew prayed that battle and death might be avoided. Thorvin rode upon a large pony, not wishing to seem the lesser of those with whom he intended to lure into a trap, greeting the pretender to the throne as one might an old friend. Seeing the hardness in the eyes of Ketil and Gideon, Thorvin's face fell, wherefore he and the dozen or so members of his escort glared at Andrew. Each of them was aware of who the traitor was. Looking away as he squirmed, the abbot could have sworn as he looked towards the forest that he saw the glint of a number of arrowheads, and a number of arrows being strung in the distance.
Ketil, friend.
Save your breath, Thorvin. You have one chance to join me, or to beg on thy knees like the cur that you are for your pitiful life before I hang you and all of thy filthy followers as traitors.
Ketil growled furiously. Something in his voice made Andrew look up. Maybe it was that he sounded much as his father, the late king, had in life. Or maybe it was that Andrew realized neither man would back down. He realized he had to intercede at that moment.
Wait, you two.
What, monk?
Thorvin hissed angrily.
Thorvin, I have known you a long time. Since long before this interminable internecine war began, and I have never known you for a traitor. Would you have me remember you otherwise?
Andrew replied, summoning the words from deep within him, quite where he knew not, only that they flowed as water does from a waterfall.
Watch your mouth, goat, lest I cleave it in two. It is Ketil who is in danger of committing treason.
Treason? But his lairdship is tennis!
Gideon interrupted, to the astonishment of even Andrew, who had not known the Arn had been included in the discussion. But of course he was included, he told himself. The man was the head of Ketil's guard, and went everywhere with him, even into the forest of the Wilder Elves.
Tennis? But you are laying claim to the throne!
Thorvin exclaimed, flabbergasted, as his men looked at one another in shock. Nay, I am Tennist. The words sounded as though they were torn from Ketil's throat, and yet he nonetheless uttered them. Domhnall recognized me as such. Incredulous, Thorvin began to splutter, only to snort,
Very funny, lad. The least you could have done is face me as a man rather than as a lad with his hand caught on the pastry.
It is no lie. I have the royal charter right here.
Andrew revealed, pulling the document from the pack he had brought with him. The charter was shown to all, with it showing all the old seals and signatures, those of all the Mormares, lairds, and clerical heads of the reigns of Causantin and Mile Martin, along with the seals of Domno and Buidich, Cathal Archdruid of Rona. His seal could be seen to have been reapplied twice, and the Mormare of Cull, also reapplied twice.
There is an extra copy in Rona, another bill taken to Cull, and still another on the High King's person.
Andrew informed the stunned dwarf. Thorvin's face turned scarlet beneath his beard and thick mane of hair, just as those of his supporters did. But then the wind blew past, whistling as it did, and a guard hurried over from his own camp to report that Kettle's banner had been spotted from beyond the rise to the northwest. It was Simon, leading a detachment of sellswords sent on around the forest to attempt a strike at the rear of Duib, only to have gotten carried away and now riding around to encircle Thorvin. Doing this after he had heard the news from the Lady Arduina that the king had turned upon Kettle, so that Simon rode now as though in a death charge, fearful for his beloved elder brother.
This is not over.
Thorvin gasped with another sigh, but all who saw his deflated figure and ashen face could tell the fight was over. He had been defeated without a single sword being swung.
And it's time for a Patreon shout out, as yes, we now have a Patreon patron. So shout out goes to David Perlmutter, the first of our Squire patrons.
An incredible tale.
Tom gasped as Domno finished recounting his tale of how he had gotten the crown and managed to keep it as they sat in the dining hall of the monks' living quarters. Amazed, he added, not for the first time,
I must say, I've faith, Domno. You really are cleverer than I originally assumed you to be.
Buidich snickered gleefully as she sat next to her husband as they ate slowly, relishing their time with Tom.
Domhnall and Andrew not only cornered by themselves that brute Kettle, but have also brought him onside.
A victory that is beyond words.
The abbot remarked, still amazed by the story they had told him.
I must ask though, how was when you saw him? Did he truly kneel and pay homage?
Domhnall stuttered weakly, only to swallow and admit,
We actually gave command of the King's City to the Strawthorn, with orders to give the keys of it and the palace to Kettle. We thereafter departed on royal procession with Athwotla, who hurried off home to resolve some legal issue or other with the village near Castle Athelin.
Tom did not blame them for this choice, though he did have his own concerns.
And if Kettle should grow angry or feel snubbed by such a decision?
What? But I thought he might have had time to cool his temper,
Domhnall said, having not thought of that.
He has command of the kingdom. Why would he be angry? I had rather thought to delay the paying of homage to the new year.
It was a sound idea, Tom mused, if only to himself, and one that he might have made himself. Later, when he was by himself in his private chambers, he was to pen a swift letter to the local laird, Owain of Kilvenna, thinking it might be best to advise him to be prepared for an attack. He knew that Owain was elderly, and his grandsons too young for a proper battle against a seasoned warrior such as Kettle, but it was the monastery's only real defense. The royal couple, when he saw them the next day, were in a bright mood, having stayed in a large manor house that had been built for them nearby some years ago. The two had sent for their children, who were to be found some days away in Castle Hithwern. The queen, for her part, was keen also to visit the local Weavers' Guild, the guild being one that she had helped to found and had doted on for some time, just as her husband did the cathedral. That day saw the two of them tour the workshops of the various workers before looking through what might one day be the main hall of the future cathedral. The walls had not been completed, with the foundations long since laid down and the supports for the walls set up.
I intend for this wing of the building to be where the school shall be. Our hope is that with the stairway leading up to the library, above which shall occupy the whole of that part of the second floor.
Tom was telling them, always keen to discuss his favorite topic, his cathedral, and nowhere was he to find a keener audience than Domhnall. Impressive.
Impressive? And how will the walls bear the weight?
The latter asked of his host, eager to know more.
Simple. We shall add more buttresses.
Tom replied with an easy grin, before he noticed off in the distance the arrival of a number of horsemen. It was Owain with his grandsons, Walter, Harion, and Tom.
Ah, here are your vassals, my laird.
Excellent. I had wanted to visit them later. Wait, why aren't they in force?
At this query, Tom was a touch embarrassed, and was swift to explain himself just as Owain arrived to throw himself onto one knee before the monarch. Furious, Domhnall, though, was to let the decision on the matter of Owain pass before sending him back to his keep, with orders to dismiss his force back to their homes. This the laird did, if dubiously, with his grandsons sent off with their forces with instructions to rally once more in case they needed to be rapidly assembled again. If the laird had known what was to come, he would have maintained his force and would have even called upon his cousins throughout the Mormairdom to assemble.
And it's time for a Patreon shout out, as yes, we now have a Patreon patron. So shout out goes to David Perlmutter, the first of our Squire patrons.
The greatest concern that weighed upon Tom over the course of the days that followed was the question of whether Kettle might attack. He awaited news with bated breath, waking every day to the fear that an attack might come. Desperately, he was to pray during that time to every god, in particular Zu for protection, and Scotia also. What neither he nor his guests could have foreseen was how quickly the messenger with the counter-terms of Kettle might ride after Domhnall, nor could anyone have predicted who Kettle might send. When Tom first set eyes upon the scarlet-haired messenger riding cheerily on the large chestnut stallion, he felt a little confused. The youth was dressed in the emerald wool of a pleb, but carried himself about with a sword on his waist and the air of a nobleman. Added to this was Domhnall's open-mouthed, dumbfounded face when he saw the youth.
You are a shaman, are you not?
They were supervising the builders and carpenters as they worked on the cathedral at this time, with Simon arriving a little before lunch, with a laugh and a sharp cry. Bright-eyed and cheerful, he was to chortle at the bewilderment on the couple's faces.
Wait, Simon? But how is that possible? You were but a wee lad when last we met.
Buidich exclaimed when he had drawn near to them and thrown himself down onto one knee before Domhnall.
I am flattered you remember me, your grace.
He sniggered, as informal as his brother was formal.
I was but 7 or so when last we met. I am almost a man, grown now.
Still dumbfounded, the couple listened to the terms he presented, rather more seriously now.
My brother has agreed to your terms, but on condition of a union of the clans. His eldest daughter, that is to say, my niece, Balta, will wed thy son Maldred. What is more is that we will foster with him, as part of the agreement, until they are wed, and if you should wish it, Achaeus will foster with you.
I am not so certain of fosterage,
Domhnall fussed, not liking that part of the terms.
All else I think I have no difficulties with.
Also, if you should wish, your eldest daughter will also wed my nephew, Achaeus, to be queen someday.
Simon continued in a reassuring tone, key to allay the king's concerns.
And though he did not wish me to say so, he had thought to celebrate Yule in Skane. You would be most welcome to celebrate it with us, just as in the days when our father was abbot in Culhernhan, and to discuss these terms further in that time.
Still troubled, Domhnall pouted, only to sigh and to motion for him to up.
On your feet, cousin, I would not have you kneel.
Only if you agreed to the marriage offers. I refuse to fail in this task entrusted to me by Catil.
Do as he says, Simon.
Buidich said, keen to support her husband, and not really pleased about the notion that any of her children should be promised in marriage quite yet. Simon insisted, and refused to regain his feet until they agreed that there should be a tentative engagement, with the youth regaining his feet at that time with an eager smile. It was with a start at that moment that both of them realized that though still a youth, Simon had already outgrown them.
I must ask.
Tom began when the royals came over to join him by the cathedral. He had overheard a little of their conversation and felt nervous.
Are you by any chance Simon Constantine?
I am,
the youth answered breezily.
I have heard much of Domhnall's pet cathedral, and should like to see it.
Awestruck and moved at his interest, Tom was to glance at the debating couple behind the youth, who nodded to him absently. Reaching out to put a hand around the boy's shoulders, Tom immediately withdrew his hand when he realized what he was about. It would not do to treat a son of Constantine in quite so casual a manner.
This way, Prince Simon,
he said, beckoning him instead. The youth followed, and though he had expected high walls and impressive stonework, what he could not have predicted was what he saw that day. The stone floor was marble white and clean, enough to eat off of. The walls, already reaching 20 meters high, were not yet finished, with columns reaching up and carved in the style once used by Roma in order to support the walls. There was more, of course. There were stone statues meant to decorate the entrance, 2 of which were crafted images of Scotia with her thistle in hand, and in the other a set of scales. There was, of course, a 3rd statue, this one of the royal couple with their infant daughter, the Lady Shonag, so named after Buidich's grandmother. There was more, with the altar stairs almost finished, and the altar itself likewise almost completed, with a new statue for the paragon Baltair, a martyr who had resisted the Dark Elves during their invasion. It was he who had misled them during the invasion, delaying them long enough for the counterforces of Achaeus to prepare and counter them. What the abbot did not expect was for Simon to interrupt him.
I know the story, Abbot. I know all the tales of Caledonia's paragons and martyrs.
He pointed now to the large windows.
Why such windows?
To let in the light. It is important, for without it, the temple would seem a crypt, rather than the home of the divine.
Tom told him with a wide grin, proud of his cathedral.
What if birds flutter in, such as those ravens that have been gathered near the wooden temple?
Simon inquired as they moved about the large shrine that was more than 30 meters in width and twice that in length.
They will not,
Tom answered readily. How is that?
Allow me to introduce you to Waller.
the abbot told him, leading him to a workshop outside in the village that had grown about the cathedral over the years. Taking him to a nearby wooden house with a thatch roof with a workshop attached to it, one where a brown-bearded dwarf was in the midst of working.
Wallen, show the prince what you are working on. Fine, abbot.
The dwarf hissed irritably, hating to be interrupted when in the midst of work. At the abbot's prompting, he was to show what he was working upon. It was a strange shade of deep red, with an ability to reflect the light, the prince noticed with a gasp.
Glass, your grace. Tinted glass is the future. My laird.
Tom informed the awestruck prince.
And it's time for a Patreon shout out, as yes, we now have a Patreon patron. So shout out goes to David Perlmutter, the first of our Squire patrons.
After this, Simon was to go from treating the cathedral as a pet of Domhnall's with thinly veiled bemusement to being impassioned by it himself. He was to join the royal couple and Tom in lengthy discussions of the building plans and the stone carvings, to wanting to meet with some of the sculptors. Once introduced to them, the youth was to beg to be allowed to be shown how to use some of their tools, even as he spent much of his time in long discussions with the normally irascible Wallen. Much as Simon's visit was enjoyed by all involved, as with all things, it was soon at an end, ending about the 13th of the 10th month, just as the autumn began to fade away and the cold wind became ever more biting.
It is a shame you must leave so soon,
Domhnall said, hating to see his cousin leave. Simon laughed easily.
Cousin, there is no need to mourn. We will see one another again soon.
Embracing Queen Boadich one last time before jumping onto his stallion once more, he soon made to leave, waving at them until the temple and village had disappeared behind them.
How very odd.
Domhnall was to comment more to himself, with Boadich chilled by the words that followed.
It seems rather more final than I expected. I do hope nothing happens to young Shimon. I rather enjoyed his company.
Let us pray for him, husband.
Boadich told him, worried for the lad also, moved by her husband's sentiments. If only she could have foreseen 2 days into the future, for she would have prayed for someone nearer to her than her husband's cousin. The fog that rolled over the locality of Banrisreep spilled in from the northeast, coming in from the direction of the Highland-walled temple of Athfatla. It was accompanied by a cold chill, a sense of doom, and a series of colds that laid low a number of the villagers and monks. Preoccupied with his sick work crew and flock, Tom was kept away from the cathedral and indoors, leaving command of the crew, still able to work, to Domhnall. Though he gladly agreed to delay his departure in order to be of help, Domhnall was occasionally wont to sigh sorrowfully. The cause for his melancholy was the fact that his son, Maldred, had delayed his departure from the castle on account of a sprained ankle just before he was due to leave. This, along with the fog rolling in, served only to worsen Boadich's desperation to be away and by their children's sides at such a time. What also troubled the lady, though she did not tell Domhnall, was that she had as of late struggled with falling asleep. The cause of her troubled sleep was a newly arrived raven in the locality, a dark-plumed beast nigh on twice the size of most others that she had seen. Cawing just outside their window, it would only approach in the dead of night, staring into its eyes as it blinked a pair of dark eyes at her. Bobbing its head up and down, she felt a wave of coldness. Swallowing, she would at first seek to ignore it, wherefore it would caw all the louder until even Domhnall began to stir. Worried for her husband, she was to take to trying to chase it away with a broom, at which time it simply moved onto the stone roof above them to caw near the window. Reaching over to close the latch door to the window, she was nonetheless to hear it cawing at her through the wood. A sense of dread had begun to consume her, even as she considered fleeing the locality of Banris Reap with Domhnall, saying to him that morning,
We must leave this place soon.
All right, we should be about finished with our affairs here.
Domhnall said soothingly, keen to reassure her, hardly blind to her difficulties.
Oh, I think we should leave in 2 days. You may inform Lewis.
Lewis, when she found him, was by the stables with his men, impatient to once more be on the road. Most of their guards had gone into town to stay at the local tavern, the only one in the locality. He had preferred, alongside his fellow Norensians, to manage and care for their war horses shipped in from the continent. They had become quite skittish as of late.
How odd.
Lewis complained in his heavily accented Khalid, annoyed by the strange mood that had overtaken the horses.
Must be the fog.
And it's time for a Patreon shout out, as yes, we now have a Patreon patron. So shout out goes to David Perlmutter, the first of our Squire patrons.
What neither Louis nor Buidich, or even Domhnall or Tom could have possibly known, was that the wheel of fortune had shifted. At present, they were all astride the wheel, but it was to irreversibly shift and swing, so that they were all cast into the mire. The weapon of choice, on the part of fate, was to be Athfatla. Where he had seemed the finest of friends to Domhnall when he had separated from them, he and his grandson had by this time armed themselves and moved along towards Banris Reap. Quite why was to remain a mystery for some years to follow. Certainly, he might have found out about the plans to transfer Kurstog's engagement to Achaeus, but even that could not have explained his sudden betrayal. Charging into the vicinity of the village, torch and sword in hand, it happened that Ianrug was with his grandson, slashing at everyone that they came across. Slaughter the men, enjoy the women, and burn all that you see, but do not touch Domhnall. He is mine. Hearing this, the people who had begun to consider begging were to turn about and begin to fly away, racing for the local wooden temple or monks' quarters. The monks, brave souls that they were, threw open the doors and sought to welcome them all in, even as some moved to place themselves between the axemen and swordsmen of Athfatla. Please, in the name of Scotia, stop! This is consecrated land! You cannot do this! They shouted and cried out, to no avail. Such is the way of the most monstrous of men, and such is the ignorance of those who lived their whole lives apart from the brutal and the barbarous. None knew that this was futile better than Tom, and it was he who, seeing what it was that was happening, turned to some of his men. Hurry, away, away! Send for Owain's warriors! This was done, and as the flames grew hot and in ever greater size, Athfatla searched about the village, hungry for his victim. His grandson, no less frustrated, was to become ever more annoyed. He had set fire to the manor house of the royal couple, and yet the royal couple had not been found. Once again, the crowing and snickering of the crones echoing in their ears, they were to take to shouting at their men, even as banners were spotted in the distance. "It is Owain of Kilvena!" one man cried out as he pointed towards the battle standards on the horizon. "Bah! Leave him to me, Eardsith. You search the cathedral structure for the king," Ianrug commanded sternly. Leave not one of Owain's house alive. Aye, grandfather. The battle was joined, and Owain was soon to find himself overwhelmed and put to the sword, but not before he was made to witness the first of his grandsons slain. The second and third attempted a dashing rescue, yet were alongside the rest of their less experienced men to meet with the same fate. Faith! Tom was to gasp as he witnessed the carnage as he stepped out from within the temple, having hidden away the Lady Boudicca a few minutes prior. Seeing a woman about to be violated, the bearded monk was to throw himself forward, desperate to intercede and help her, yelling for the man to stop as he did so. In response, he was struck in the side of a head with a torch and thrown against the cathedral wall. Thinking him dead, the man left him then for dead, unaware that Tom still drew breath. Where was Domhnall in all this tragedy? He was within his beloved cathedral, having helped to hide a number of people within its walls and organize some of the resistance. He did so in spite of his mortal terror, as he could not bear to leave the children to die. He was to race back to the entrance in search of several more. Spotting them, he grabbed them from a nearby stall, only to thrust them towards Wallen. "Take them into the cathedral," Domhnall commanded, at his kingliest at that moment. The dwarf nodded his head. "Domhnall MacRingan, I have found you," Eärdsith called out, riding forward on his horse, a smile on his lips as he drew near. Seeing the youth, Domhnall froze with Wallen and the 3 children behind him. He backed away, though not before he did something he had never done before in such a situation: drew his sword. Hardly an accomplished warrior for all his virtues, and hardly a brave man, he shook and trembled in the face of young Eärdsith. "At least spare the children," Domhnall begged, hands shaking as he faced down the youth. "Nay, must the lion treat with the gazelle?" Eärdsith snapped at him, only to ask heatedly, "Why did you deny me Kurstag? If you had only given her to me, none of this would have happened." Domhnall struggled for an answer. He should have pleaded. Maybe a part of him whispered he could offer her still and save himself, save those behind him. It was with a start that he realized not only that he did not believe this, but that the very thought repulsed him. The thought of his beloved Kurstag's wedding to such a man was so abhorrent, he would prefer to die. "I did it because you were never worthy, and because I am a king. A king must choose the good of the realm and her people, rather than the pitiful feelings of a wee lad such as yourself, or thy illegitimate snake of a grandfather of yours," Domhnall snapped, drawing himself up as he continued to shake, yes, but held his ground defiantly. Eärdsith had not expected the answer, and though he was to react with a great deal of rage, even he had to admit later that the man had died well. The moment when he did strike Domhnall down, he hardly heard the cries or flames around him, hearing only the promises of those weird sisters. The promise of Kurstag. Triumphant, he was to, once he had finished his task, turn about to join his grandfather, who decided, once the busy work of butchering the town was at an end, to have a feast in the middle of the village. This done, they soon left with what treasure goods and women they could find. Hours later, when Boudicca had stepped out from her hiding place, she was to freeze when she neared the foot of the cathedral. Wailing, she threw herself upon the body of her husband, sobbing uncontrollably for hours. Tom, his head ringing when he made his way around the wall, was to fall to his knees also, sobbing brokenly. His dream, to build the finest cathedral on the Lordly Isle, was broken even as he wept for his beloved king. Tom had loved Domhnall, with whom he had toiled on the cathedral for more than 10 years. They were more than laird and subject. They were friends. How could the gods be so cruel? He was to ask of himself, even as he poured all the tears in his body upon the soil next to his beloved monarch. In the distance, Not only did a large raven caw triumphantly, but 3 sisters were to be seen by those who chanced to glance in the direction of the foot of the Highland Mountains, laughter on their lips.
We have our usual shout out to David Perlmutter, of course, but also to the fact that we have a Kickstarter that's going to go off in about a week's time, or a little more than a week's time, for our newest book, Akuma no Ren. It's a Japanese samurai fantasy novel which combines the best ideas from Japanese literature with fantasy fiction. We hope you'll support it. The link will be in the comment section down below.
When the stories of this event began to spread, it was with astonishment and a great deal of bereavement that Caledonia greeted the news. Many were to murmur that Dumnall, in spite of a lifetime of cowardice, had died better and in more kingly a fashion than most of the nation's recent rulers. Simon, when he heard the news, was to be restrained by Louis's men who had survived and been injured in the fighting, only to be made to retreat by Dumnall just before he had passed. Sent away when he had realized that the 5 could not possibly stand against 100 times that number, it was a decision that saved Simon. Consumed with grief, he was to vow vengeance against the house of Athfatla. Instead, though, he was to bring the news to his elder brother within a fortnight. Ketil and Simon, when they heard the news, were consumed with rage. Marching west, they were to hang grandfather and grandson and diminish the lands of the Mormares of Athfatla by half. The new Mormare was made to watch all this, was taken hostage, and sent to court after being made to pay a massive indemnity to the cathedral. One of the great regrets Simon was to have was being unable to show his brother the undamaged walls that he had seen. It was a regret that the 2 men were to brood over more than 1 glass of wine. Ketil, a lover of cathedrals, was to donate more than 50 gold marks a year to the building of the cathedral for the whole of his reign. Doing so, he was to, in the 2nd year of his reign, apply to Kiranas for the canonization of his cousin of blessed memory. What, may you ask, was Caledonia to later say of Dumnall IV? Only that good King Dumnall would have reigned long and well, and was the best of all the kings since Cosantine. Long were the long stride years, heavy the burden inflicted by his spears. This ere he and his ilk disappears down into the realm all tyrants fear above all else, so that none shed tears. Achaeus and Duib followed the Moon Laird. Of their crimes sing still the bards. At this time none dared nor defied the highest of lairds, none save Ketil Hero's son. Yet he fared but poorly, for all Mormares at this time erred. The suns didst shine brighter, rose e'er higher. His swords were ne'er sharper, nor did his spears glimmer quite so brightly as the braver prince. Muddy were his wits, ugly his long nose and thick lips, plump were his hips. Ne'er did a maiden give him a kiss, none save his wife, she of generous hips. And yet, oh, did the bards weep still. Down and o'er the hills do all weep, until the day the giants do all kill. Green were the trees and the meadows, so long as the gods didst bestow so pious a fellow under the glades, the forests, hills, and meadows. Few were his spears, few his swords and arrows. O foul Athfatla, of 1,000 depravities, why Why, oh why, Athpatla, didst thou give into thy vanities? Where, oh where, hast the gentle king gone? Why, oh why, hast the wise king departed ere the dawn? Many were the stones he laid, great the gifts on his temple's dais, beauteous his hands' work. Ne'er did the Yule's gifts shirk, from poor to wealthy, all did give thanks, so that he was most praised. Wits he lacks, but wealth, oh why, Athpatla, did ye rob the Khalids of he of the white garb? Oh, how the bards do sing of his sweet mien, how they lament his brow most green, that has since turned ashen. Why, oh why, Athpatla, didst thou rob the Khalids of he of the white garb? Why didst thou make Buadich sob? Why, oh why, didst thou sick a mad mob against Buadich's joy, and thus rob us of the good man's reign? Where, oh where, hast his reign gone? All wished that he might reign. Summer were the days, green was all the fields of haze, frequent with the rainy days, yet now everywhere art the dusty days. Arms heavy and eternal art wintry days, for gone art the lustier days. Before them has Dumnal departed away. Where hast he gone? Only Orcus knows, and he is also away.
We have our usual shout out to David Perlmutter, of course, but also to the fact that we have a Kickstarter that's going to go off in about a week's time, or a little more than a week's time, for our newest book, Akuma no Ren. It's a Japanese samurai fantasy novel which combines the best ideas from Japanese literature with fantasy fiction. We hope you'll support it. The link will be in the comment section down below.